Hey there, Patreon podcast pals, and welcome back to another edition of Cards on the Table. I'm John Stolness, and coming up this week, we're going to open up 3 packs from the year 1988. We're going to open up a pack of 1988 Fleer, we're going to open up a pack of 1988 Topps, and we're going to open up a pack of 1988 Donruss. Now, 1988, I was 12 years old, and this is right at the height of my collecting. I think the 88 Donruss cards, they were pretty much given away every time you went to the supermarket. There is so many of these in circulation. You can literally still buy a box of 1988 Donruss cards for like $5. If you go on eBay, these are the most plentiful cards in the world. You can actually find more 88 Donruss than you can 1988 Topps cards. But we're going to open up some of these cards and see what we get. Just a reminder, folks, please tell other people about our Patreon if you think they might enjoy some of the bonus content. And I thank you guys for everything you have done, donating and contributing to the Patreon and to the podcast and all that. It's been just tremendous to have you guys with us all this time, especially during a Philly season that has been this disappointing. But obviously, we're going to be hunting for some Phillies. We're going to be hunting for some Hall of Famers and just some good players to talk about from the 1980s. So before I run out of space here on my computer, let's open up this pack of 1988 Fleer. And I think of all the different brands in 1988. I think this was my favorite design. As with every pack that we open up a Fleer, we get a sticker right off the bat, and here we get a Los Angeles Dodgers sticker. And on the back, it just has a picture of Dodger Stadium. So we start off with the guy who will probably pretty much be featured in any alphabetical list of any players, Don Ossie. Make sure you pronounce his name correctly. Don Ossie pitched for a long time for the Red Sox and the Angels and the Orioles, was not a major star, but this guy was. Look at this, right off the bat. One Mr. Nolan Ryan. This was close to the end of his career, but obviously he continued to pitch into the 90s through a no-hitter with the Texas Rangers well after this. But Nolan Ryan here was still pitching with the Astros. He had a 8-16 season here with the Astros, but a 2.76 ERA in 1987 in 211 innings, 270 strikeouts that season. And Nolan Ryan just looks like a badass, no matter how old he is. I mean, this was a horse. It really is. It is hard to believe how long he pitched for, how many no-hitters he had, and what a dominating pitcher he was. And of course, he played a pivotal role in Phillies history. Was the starting pitcher in Game 5 of the 1980 National League Championship Series, that ridiculous game in that ridiculous series that the Phillies managed to come back. They were trailing 5-2 off Nolan Ryan going into the 8th inning and managed to score a bunch of runs. They scored 3 off of Nolan Ryan himself, and then they got a couple more inherited runners from Nolan Ryan that inning when they started off. I still remember how that inning led off. I think it was Larry Boa with a base hit to center field, and then Bob Boone with a perfect bunt single down the third baseline. And then, it was Bob Boone hit a comebacker to Nolan Ryan that Ryan muffed, and then Greg Gross laid down a bunt down the third baseline, loaded the bases. Nolan Ryan then walked Pete Rose. He was out of the game, and after that, lots of other good things followed for that Phillies team. So the 1980 Phillies, Nolan Ryan played an integral part in that team. We'll set that Nolan Ryan aside so we can put him in our Hall of Famer list. Here is a former Philly right before he joined the Phillies, Phil Bradley, and I believe he joined the Phillies in 1988, if memory serves. He was coming off a season with the Seattle Mariners in which he was quite good. He had 4 straight seasons where he had 297 or better in 84, 85, and 86. Phil Bradley hit over 300. He had 26 homers in 1985 and then 12 homers and 14 homers the 2 years after that. But this was a very good hitter, and when he got to Philadelphia, he was terrible. He was terrible. It turned out to be an awful free agent signing because he was just terribly unproductive moving from Seattle to Philadelphia. He was supposed to be one of the missing pieces that helped the Phillies in the late 80s get back to the World Series after they had gotten there in 1983 as part of the Von Hayes, Juan Samuel, Von Hayes, Juan Samuel, Mike Schmidt, even towards the end of Mike Schmidt's career, Lance Parrish, that whole group. Phil Bradley was a part of those teams and was terrible when he came to Philadelphia, but he was very good for the Seattle Mariners for a number of years. Here's Jim Lindemann, outfielder, first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals. Here we have Tom Brookins, infielder. They didn't. I mean, I guess he played all over the place because they have infield for Tom Brookins. And again, these mustaches back in the '80s were terrific. And I do love the design. I think this is the best, as you'll see, of all the 1988 card designs. You have the logo in the upper right-hand corner, guy's name and the position he plays, and I like the red and blue stripes going around the back. It's a very simple design, but I think I thought it was very cool. And these cards, the pictures are pretty good too. Mark McLemore, second baseman for the at that time the Los Angeles Angels, or the California Angels at that point. In the 80s, they were still calling themselves the California Angels. Mike Stanley, catcher for the Texas Rangers. Don't remember much about Mike Stanley. Now this guy was awesome. This is a great pack. Oh my gosh. Will Clark. This was not his rookie card, but this was his second-year card. And Will Clark was one of the best pure hitters in baseball for the entire latter part of the 1980s, 86, 87, up through 90. Will Clark had the sweetest swing. He was called the Natural because he had the best swing, tall, lanky left-hander, and he went off in the 1989 playoffs in a series against the Chicago Cubs, in which he and Mark Grace battled each other. I think both guys hit over 600 in that National League Championship Series, and that was the year Will Clark took the Giants to the World Series, where they lost 4 straight to the Oakland A's. But Will Clark was one of the best pure hitters in baseball, would routinely hit over 300. And this season, in 1987, before a couple of seasons before that World Series team, he hit 308 in 150 games, had 35 homers and 91 RBIs for the San Francisco Giants. He had only 96 strikeouts that year to 91 RBIs. I mean, he just was a phenomenal hitter. Phenomenal hitter. One of the very best hitters in baseball in the late 1980s, early 1990s. That's a terrific card. Those Will Clark cards were worth quite a bit of money back in the day. And then look who else is in the pack. A fellow Bay Area guy, again, a guy who was matched up in that 1989 World Series, Mark McGwire. This was not his rookie card, because obviously there's that 1985 Topps Mark McGwire card from when he was on Team USA for the Olympics. But obviously this is the card from after the season, in which he hit 49 home runs as a rookie, 118 RBIs, had a 289 batting average for the Oakland A's. Again, this is the card that came out after his rookie season. This was a highly sought after card back when I was little, and obviously we all know how great Mark McGwire turned out to be. It's still a question. Should Mark McGwire have gotten more consideration for the Hall of Fame? I know he admitted to taking performance-enhancing drugs and taking steroids, and I think a lot of his late season numbers were specifically due to that. I think his career probably would have ended after a very good start to his career. He would have had a lot of good seasons as a young power hitter for the Oakland A's, but I think most of the time that he went to St. Louis and towards the latter part of his career was putting up all those home runs. He's a part of the steroid era. I mean, that's just what it was. It was in the conversation when he was battling with Sammy Sosa, hitting 70 home runs in that season, 1998. When he and Sammy Sosa were going back and forth, I mean, he had Androstine Dion in the locker room, and everybody kind of knew that something was going on, but nobody really wanted to talk about it. It was kind of one of those dirty little secrets in baseball. And so Mark McGwire had a very strange career, but there's no denying the fact that in 1987, he put up the greatest power season that any rookie had ever put together leading up to that time. Mark McGwire. That was a great card. I remember getting that card when I was a kid. That was one of the cards everybody my age wanted to get, was that Mark McGwire rookie card in Fleer. So that's pretty cool. We just happened to grab that here. I still get excited. I still get excited when I get a card like that I remember being really excited about from my youth. Here's a picture of Greg Booker at Veterans Stadium, and a lot of these Fleer cards from the 80s were taken at Veterans Stadium for whatever reason. You can always tell. Infielder Jody Reed of the Boston Red Sox. He wasn't a Philly in this particular card, but he later became a Philly. Roger McDowell, one of those guys that Ed Wade traded for at the trade deadline back in the 1990s, when he tried to consistently supplement the bullpen with pitchers. And Roger McDowell was a guy that everybody liked. He was a kind of a cartoon character. He held a kangaroo court. He was in charge of keeping all of the Phillies pitchers in line, was kind of a goofball, and was a decent pitcher for a number of years, just not wearing a Phillies uniform. He later became the pitching coach of the Atlanta Braves, and the Phillies tried to hire him as a pitching coach, but the Braves were able to retain him, and that's when the Phillies went out and signed Joe Kerrigan to be their pitching coach, which turned out to be kind of a disastrous move. So Roger McDowell had a very good post-player career as a pitching coach for the Atlanta Braves. Mike Pagliarulo, a third baseman for the New York Yankees, and Jose Lind was a very good. Oh, there's a second card here. Jose Lind was a very good second baseman on those really good late '80s Pirates teams. He was the everyday second baseman. This was his rookie card, and Jose Lind was never a star. I don't even know if Jose Lind made an All-Star team, but he was a good guy to have towards the bottom of the order. Played solid defense, was a really good player on those Pirates teams. And Randy Bush finishes off this pack of 88 Fleer. But that is a really successful pack. I mean, you got Nolan Ryan, you got Will Clark, and you got Mark McGwire. That's a good pack. That might be the best pack we've opened here on Cards of the Table, that 1988 pack. So let's open up our pack of 1988 Topps, and let's see what we get there. And, of course, 1988 Topps has the gum, which we are, of course, not going to eat. Let's see. Right off the bat, we get one of my least favorite Phillies players of all time. We just talked about him a second ago, the great Lance Parrish. Lance Parrish, for those of you who aren't familiar, he was the big free agent signing going into the 1987 season. In the 1986 season, the Mets ran away with the National League East. They won by 20-some-odd games. But the Phillies came in second and finished, I think it was 10 games over 500. They won 86 games. And a lot of people thought the Phillies were a team on the rise. And they went out and signed Lance Parrish in the offseason because with the Detroit Tigers in 1986, he'd hit 22 home runs in just 91 games. The seasons before that, he'd hit 32, 27, 33, and 28 home runs. He was a power-hitting catcher at a time when you didn't have power-hitting catchers. An all-star in the American League on a regular basis. Lance Parrish was going to be a big key to the Phillies in 1987. They even had an ad campaign about Lance Parrish called Lance Us a Pennant, which again is just awful. What a terrible slogan. I mean, good Lord. But Lance Parrish was supposed to be the key to the Phillies turning things around. And in 1987, his first season with the team, Lance Parrish started 130 games, had 17 home runs, 67 RBIs, had a slugging percentage of .399, and had a batting average of .245. I mean, he was awful. And he actually made an all-star team the following season with even worse numbers. Lance Parrish turned out to be a complete bust as a free agent, and still, by Phillies fans of a certain age, as one of not hated is a strong word, but one of the most disregarded Phillies of all time. Nobody likes Lance Parrish, who was around in the 80s and was a fan of the team. Glenn Hoffman of the Dodgers. Don't really remember him all that much. You have a picture of Whitey Herzog, and I believe that's Tony Pena of Cardinals leaders here. Here's a great player, Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield, great player for the Padres and Yankees for decades. I mean, he started his career in 1973. I don't remember exactly when Dave hung him up, but he was definite Hall of Famer. One of my favorite Dave Winfield stories is when he was I think it was it a spring training game or maybe it was a regular season game. He was playing the outfield, and Dave had a good arm, and he was a great athlete. He was drafted as a basketball player. He could have been a professional NBA player as a basketball player, but he was trying to throw somebody out at home and hit a bird with his ball in mid-flight. As he was trying to record an out, his ball hit a bird that was flying in his path and killed the bird. If I remember that correctly. That's my favorite Dave Winfield story of all time. Dave Winfield had great power for a number of seasons, led the league in RBIs. He had 6 100 RBI seasons at this point in his career, but also had a bunch of triples. He was just a terrific athlete, incredibly consistent. At this time, he had 332 homers. He never got to 500, but Dave Winfield was a great player for a number of seasons for the Padres and then the Yankees. Dwayne Ward, relief pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. Eddie Williams of the Cleveland Indians. Don't remember him at all. Phil Garner was kind of a scrappy, hard-nosed player for the A's and the Pirates and the Astros, and then for the Dodgers. Played for a long time. Started in 1973. Was playing the game. Jay Tibbs. No idea who Jay Tibbs is. Pitching for the Expos here. We've got Frank. Look at this guy. I mean, tell me this guy shouldn't be operating an Italian restaurant. Frank Lucchesi. Looks like a guy who should absolutely be on South Street, operating Frank's Place, where you can get the best clams and mussels in the city. I don't remember much about Frank as a baseball manager, but I'll bet his red sauce is quite good. John Cerruti for the Blue Jays. Casey Candell, who was a Topps All-Star rookie for some reason. Casey Candell, in 138 games, batted .272 with a .347 slugging percentage. Had 23 home runs. No, he had 1 home run, 23 RBIs in 138 games. Why was Casey Candell a Topps All-Star rookie? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Jack Clark, an All-Star first baseman for the National League. He had one big home run season for St. Louis, and that was in 1987, the year these cards came out. He led the National League in on-base percentage at .459. Von Hayes, by the way, that season finished in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th in on-base percentage at .404. John Kruk had an on-base percentage of .406 for the Padres in 1987 and actually finished in 6th place, 1 spot ahead of Von Hayes. Glenn Braggs of the Brewers, if I remember correctly, was kind of a decent power hitter for a little while there. You have Mike Smithson of the Twins, and then Len Matuzak of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So that was an okay pack. Couple interesting guys in Lance Parrish and Dave Winfield. All right, let's open up one more pack, and we'll open up the 88 Donruss. And you've seen these cards everywhere. Again, like I said, you can get these cards pretty much anywhere. You could still... Oh, no, these are 1989s. My bad. Okay, we're going to open up a pack of 1989 Donruss. These are 89s. We've opened these before. Interesting. I don't have any 88 Donruss. I thought for sure these were the 88s. So we'll start off here with Fred Lynn, who was a really good player for a number of seasons with the Angels and then the Orioles, and here he was traded to the Tigers in midseason. You've got Alejandro Pena for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who was a quality, was he a starter at this point? I think he was a relief pitcher for most of his career. Luis Aguayo, former Philly, started his career in 1984 with the Phillies, had a couple okay seasons, kind of a utility infielder type guy. Rich, not yet, for the Cleveland Indians. That is a really nice warm-up jacket. Gene Nelson for the Oakland A's. You got Jerry Brown here for the Texas Rangers. Luis Aquino for the Royals. Pete Harnisch, a rated rookie. I love the rated rookies from Donruss. So many of these guys turned out to just not be very good at all, just like Pete Harnisch. Chad Kreuter of the Rangers. Tracy Jones of the Montreal Expos. Glenn Hubbard of the Oakland A's. This pack sucks. Luis De Los Santos of the Royals. Bud Black, former manager, former pitcher, and Jeff Hamilton of the Dodgers. Oh, we got one more here. Hal Morris of the New York Yankees. That 89 Donruss pack sucked. But we had good packs from 1988 from the Topps and from the Fleer, so I guess we'll call that a good night. Again, thanks everybody for watching this episode of Cards on the Table. I'll have some more stuff coming out for you later this week, so make sure you continue to come back to the Patreon, and we'll open up some more cards in another week or two. We'll see what we get. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you next time here on Cards on the Table.